Welcome back to the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me. Very excited for next week. Big 12 Media Days held July 8th and 9th, so I think that's Tuesday and Wednesday, right? Coming up. Big week here on the station. That's always fun. We send I think, all of our talent pretty much over to this year. It's going to be in Frisco, Texas. Been in Vegas the last couple of years, so sending the shows down to Texas. You're going to hear a lot of interviews with coaches and players from around the Big 12 Conference. And then, of course, with Utah and BYU both being in the conference this year, makes it that much more exciting. And then you've got all the storylines surrounding the teams. Of course, with BYU, sounds like Jake Ratzlaff is going to transfer. It will not be back with the program, although that case has been dismissed. And who knows what that means, whether it was...
With prejudice.
Yeah, with prejudice, right? So meaning I've seen some rumors that probably means, or it could mean it was settled by both sides, but that might not ever come public. So who knows what ended up happening there. But anyways, so yeah, Jake Retzlaff not back with BYU. And of course with Utah, you've got Devin Dampier coming in, Jason Beck, hoping to revitalize this Utah offense. So I'm curious to hear, I guess, what everybody has to say about the local teams.
I think there's going to be obviously a lot of questions, but a lot of hype surrounding Jason Beck, Devin Dampier, and this new Utah offense, and see if they can solve a lot of the problems and a lot of the issues that they had last season, which was the lack of scoring. Right? There was how many games, Christian, did they have where they lost by a possession? And how different would their season have been if they would have won those games, right? All they needed was a score. It was a one possession game, right? And so now the hope is that you can turn that around with Devin Dampier and Jason Beck at the helm, and that's going to be obviously one of the biggest storyline, if not the biggest storyline, for the University of Utah coming this fall.
Yeah, and then for BYU,
who's your quarterback?
And it
who's
sounds
your
like
QB?
For the second straight summer, we've got a full-out quarterback battle.
Yeah.
McKay Hillstead, Tyson Bourget, and Bear Bachmeier, I guess. And I would be shocked if Bear Bachmeier, he's a true freshman coming in, and that's always interesting.
Look, man, it's not maybe necessarily apples to apples. Maybe it's apples to oranges. But the University of Utah ran out a true freshman quarterback this last season who wasn't ready. And how did the season go?
Poorly.
There you go.
And I totally agree. And that's why, I guess with BYU, they have Bourget and Hillstead, who have both played college games, although not at the Big 12 level. But I liked what I saw from Hillstead when he was at Utah State. I've been producing all of the Utah State football games the last couple of years, so I've watched every game, including the starts that he made and the snaps that he took. And he's a gunslinger. And his mentality is, almost reminds me a little bit of Cam Rising, like a guy he is no question he is a leader.
Right.
No question he's going to put his body on the line to do what it takes to even pick up a first down in the first quarter. But that's also to his detriment because he's very small. I think he's like 5'10", and he's not thick. He's pretty quick, but I don't know. You don't want him. He got hurt playing like that at Utah State at the Mountain West level. You don't want him playing like that at the Big 12 level. So I don't know. But as far as passing ability, he definitely showed some flashes at Utah State. But again, going back to his height, that kind of worries me playing behind a very big offensive and defensive line. You get into the whole sight lines thing, but I don't know. I know A-Rod could come up with some clever rollouts or whatever to get him out of a messy pocket. But, of course, Hillstead is the name that I know the best, so I can talk to his ability the most.
Yeah.
And I think there is some upside there.
I think so. The first year that I did that I started calling games with Rewind was his senior year at Skyridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a couple of Skyridge games, and I there's no question for me about his passing ability. I think he's a fantastic passer. From watching him from his Skyridge times, from watching the glimpses of him that we saw at Utah State, I think that he's a really good passer, but I do think that he needs to be a little bit more physical because you're right, Christian. He did get hurt playing that way with Utah State, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to see that continue, right, at the Big 12 level. And so I'm curious to see what the offseason regiment looks like for McKay Hillstead and what the plan is now, knowing that you're not going to have Retzlaff and that the QB position is completely wide open for both Bourget, I guess Bachmeier too, for Bear Bachmeier and for McKay Hillstead.
Yeah. Last year's quarterback battle was so interesting because, of course, with Retzlaff and Bohannon, it literally went up until the first snap of the season. And by the time the game had come around, we basically knew it was going to be Retzlaff, right? But throughout the summer, the coaching staff wasn't saying anything. They were very adamant. I'm remembering now, Kalani Sitake got so sick of being asked constantly, and I know that he was probably looking forward to not having to face those questions again. And then this stuff happens, and it's like, we got to have another quarterback battle.
Welcome back.
So, yeah, that's probably tough on the coaching staff. But with Retzlaff, I mean, it definitely worked.
Yeah.
And it got BYU to double-digit wins last season, and it seems like they made the right decision. So, yeah, that would basically, I mean, I have faith that they can make the right pick for the team. I mean,
there's no doubt in my mind either that I think Kalani Sitake and both him and Aaron Roderick can come up with the best decision and what they feel will give them the most success to win games.
Not only that, but whoever is going to be playing quarterback has some nice weapons to play with, right? At
Chase
wide receiver,
Roberts is the huge man. Is the huge one.
Martin at running back, a very good offensive line. So, I mean, don't forget, like, yes, they won double-digit games last year, but they are returning most of their talent. Like, they did not lose a lot of guys.
Most of their defense.
Most of their defense.
Their defense last year was incredible.
Yeah.
So.
I want to go through real quick, and we don't have to do all of the teams in the conference because, especially towards the bottom, it kind of gets pointless. And I don't think either of us are going to have BYU or Utah towards the bottom. But let's kind of go through maybe the top 8 to 10 teams in the Big 12 and kind of see what the feel is. Do you think there's a consensus? Well, the reason I want to do this, right? The Big 12 conference announced they're not doing their preseason media poll this year.
Right.
Especially because last year Arizona State, as we all know, was picked last by the media.
16th.
And they ended up winning the conference and going to the college football playoff. So,
and real quick before we start ranking, though, I think that's dumb that they're not doing it, man, because that's what makes it fun, right?
Obviously.
You got to smear a little bit of pine in the people's faces who voted Arizona State 16, and now Arizona State are the big dogs.
Yeah. I think it's fun.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun.
It's part of the ramp up for college football.
Exactly.
Like getting ready, having some conversations. So,
exactly.
Do you think there's a consensus number one to finish atop the conference? Do you think there's, a pick?
To me, and I think maybe you can agree, I think the 1 and 2 right now can be debated between Arizona State and Iowa State.
Okay. That's not who I had at 2, but I would agree with Arizona State.
Who'd you have at 2?
I have Kansas State.
What?
Just because of, I don't know, bringing your quarterback back is always huge, especially a quarterback like Avery Johnson, who we know can do some damage.
Right.
But we'll start with Arizona State, again, bringing the quarterback back. And they obviously won the conference last year. And bringing Levitt in, I know they lose Scatabo, but like running backs, you can find a dime a dozen. And again, good defense. They've done it. And bringing the head coach and the quarterback, you look at across sports, like that is the tandem. And if you have the same head coach and quarterback year to year, you can probably count on sustaining success. So for that reason, again, that's why I had Arizona at number 1, and that's why I have Kansas State pretty high too. But I would listen to any other team for 2. I personally think that Arizona State is the favorite. I'd be surprised if anybody picked another team besides Arizona State, but
I'm in between. It kind of flips in my head all the time. I think it's Arizona State or Iowa State. Rocco Beck coming back, Matt Campbell coming back. For
again,
Iowa State.
quarterback head coach
duo. As you're talking about, that is super super important, and I think that gives them an edge. Obviously, one of the most successful, if not the most successful season for Iowa State last year. Can they build off of it is the big question. And so those two are my 1 and 2.
Okay, so we'll do 1, 2, 3. Would you have Kansas State at 3, or would you have them a little lower?
Oh,
I would listen. I mean, it gets interesting.
I would probably have them. Yeah, I'll give them a 3.
And 4 is probably Baylor, right?
4, I'm giving it to Texas Tech.
Okay. And see, Texas Tech is always a wild card because their pockets are limitless, it seems like.
Right.
So how much can you buy a roster?
They were huge in the transfer portal.
They were huge players. And they were pretty good last year, too. They weren't slouches.
No.
Right? They're not coming off a bad year.
But, again, the question is, right, cohesiveness, team chemistry.
Yeah.
How will that impact?
That's always going to be a question.
Bringing in a bunch of transfers, how will that impact your season? And so I think on paper right now, I'll give them a number 4.
Okay. We got to talk about Baylor. I think they're going to finish pretty high. Sawyer Robinson really came onto the scene last year. Dave Aranda is the big question mark because I know it's like a tale of two seasons, right with Baylor.
Yeah.
First half of the season, Baylor fans were wanting him gone. Second half of the season, they're like, oh, he saved this program. We're back. So I am curious to see which version of Dave Aranda we're going to get. And they finished 8-5 last year, so it's not like they were amazing, but they did some good things, and especially with Sawyer Robinson now being more of a, I guess, veteran player. I'm excited to see how he plays.
Where do you have Baylor?
I could see them anywhere from 4 to 6, right?
I'm going 7.
You're going 7.
I'm going 7.
All right. And that's fine.
I believe in Sawyer Robertson,
but not Dave Aranda.
I don't believe in Dave Aranda.
And I think
he got obviously give him credit for the run they had at the end of the season.
Yeah.
But is it sustainable?
Yeah.
Can he continue to win games the way that he did? Like you said, it's a tale of two seasons, right? If they get off to a slow start, that's gonna kind of give me a feeling of where Dave Aranda and this Baylor team is.
Yeah, I get you. He could easily lose his job next year. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now we're talking about a different Baylor head coach.
Right.
So I totally see why you would have them
I'm going
at 7. So who do you have next then?
Where are we at, 5?
Ish. I mean, we're kind of jumping around, but
for me at 5, I'm gonna go BYU.
Okay, so I guess that's my big question is you have BYU higher than Utah.
I do.
Even with the quarterback question now.
I do.
Okay, because you're trusting the rest of the roster.
Right.
Okay.
Chase Roberts, huge addition to bring back. LJ Martin, huge guy to bring back. Like we were talking about, you return most of that defense that made you incredibly successful last season. I'm going BYU 5 for now.
Well, and the locals are going to eat this up. I have them neck and neck, right? I have them right there in the upper middle part of the conference, right? I would be shocked if either of these two teams won the conference, to be honest with you. I do think BYU is going to take a little step back just because of quarterback, and maybe they'll prove me wrong. I don't know. Obviously, Utah is likely going to rebound from being one of the bottom teams last year, but I do have them very, very close. I think if Utah's defense can show up and show out like they're always going to do,
right,
that's not where you're worried. I think the offense is always going to be the question mark. And I know that people are excited about Devin Dampier and Jason Beck, but you got to realize too, no matter what he did last year, that was at New Mexico. And taking a step up into the Big 12, that's always going to be a big adjustment. And maybe he can do it, especially where a lot of what he does is on the ground, which probably translates a little easier. But at the same time, it's bigger, tougher competition. So I'm not ready to put Utah, as one of the Big 12 contenders or whatever, but I do think they're going to make some noise. And I have BYU right there with them because, like we mentioned a couple times, they're returning most of a double-digit win roster. Kalani Sitake proved last year he's one of the best coaches in the Big 12. It's just a matter of
100% agree.
We don't know who's taking snaps at quarterback. And whoever it is, they've got huge question marks.
Right. And there's question marks surrounding Devin Dampier. And like you mentioned, can he do it at this level, at the Power 4 level? Right, New Mexico and in the Mountain West, that's a different story. Can he continue to do it in the Big 12? For now, and for me, that's the reason why I say BYU 5, Utah 6.
Okay. Yeah.
But they'll be in the conversation. I don't think Utah's poised, and even BYU for that matter now without a quarterback, I don't think they're poised for a terrible season, right? They're not. It's not going to be a 5-6 win season, right? I think both teams will be obviously bowl eligible, and I think both teams are going to be competing for the Big 12 championship. They're going to be in the conversation up until late into the season.
Yeah, I think we both agree there, especially with, it's almost like, again, tearing it off. Like you have your top 3 or 4 teams that could contend for the title, and then the next tier, it's like 5, 6, 7, maybe 8.
Yeah.
It's like those teams are all very, very similar, with similar question marks and similar ceilings. Of course, the floor, you never know how low your floor can go, as we saw with Utah and even Oklahoma State last year. So who do you have coming in? So you had Baylor at 7, 5, 6, 7, BYU, Utah, Baylor. Who's at 8?
I'm going to give it to TCU.
Okay, that's about where I had them as well.
Yeah. They're returning a quarterback in Hoover, who I think will hopefully potentially take a big step up, but they're kind of in the mix right there. You're talking about tiers. They're in that tier for me of a team that can compete, but will be in the mix up until the very end. Similar to the conversation we're having with BYU and Utah. I see TCU in kind of the same light.
I had Kansas coming up after TCU. Do you think that's a little too rich?
I think it's a little too high.
You think so?
Actually,
even with
9.
Jalen Daniels back?
No, yeah, 9. I could see it.
Well, they ruined Colorado and BYU's season last year.
Kansas single-handedly destroyed the Big 12 last year.
Yeah. Yeah. They cannibalized the Big 12.
We were talking about a BYU Colorado in the Big 12 championship, right? It seemed like it was going to be that way.
What was it, 2 or 3 weeks out?
Exactly. It
like
was 3 weeks out.
Yeah.
It was 3 weeks out. It was the morning of BYU taking on Kansas. We were like, it's looking like it's going to shape up to be BYU Colorado.
Oh yeah, BYU's just got to get past this Kansas team.
And we were like, they're going to win, bro. Come on.
And didn't they beat BYU and then Colorado in back-to-back weeks?
Yes. They single-handedly destroyed the Big 12.
And then finished 5 and 7. But again, quarterback, head coach back together. Honestly, Jalen Daniels is a very talented player. He's just got to cut back on the turnovers.
Yes.
And that was their big issue. And we saw it at times when he did reduce those numbers. He looked great.
Right.
Again, in that BYU and Colorado game, but it's just a matter of finding the consistency there, which obviously you would assume happens now coming in as a sixth season with the program here. So he's an older player, but we'll see.
If I remember right, ESPN had them, as far as like ESPN bet goes, they had them in Jalen Daniels in the top 10 contenders for the Heisman.
That's rich.
Which I'm not buying it.
No.
I'm not buying it.
There are 10 better football players in the country than Jalen Daniels.
Yeah.
But who knows?
He was in the top 10, man.
Maybe he's one of the 10 best players in the Big 12, but even then, I don't know.
I'm not buying it.
Where do you have Colorado?
Oh, Colorado to me.
How far do you have them falling after losing their starting quarterback and wide receiver and corner? But they retain Dion is the thing.
I think Colorado comes in at 11 for me.
Okay, who'd you have at 10? Just curious.
Oh.
We don't have to talk about them, but was it Houston maybe?
I'm gonna throw Arizona there.
Arizona,
Yeah.
okay.
I think they'll have a little bit of a bounce back, but nothing too crazy.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap up just talking about Colorado because they're always going to be relevant with Dion there. I think Deion Sanders has proved that he does have the ability to bring talent in.
Right.
This will probably be a bit of a down year, though, because, again, you're trying to find your new footing with the quarterback and with the receiver talent, and especially losing Travis Hunter, who was your do-it-all guy and played both sides of the ball. So not only are you losing wide receiver one, you're also losing corner one. And then, to lose your quarterback definitely hurts. But they're not going to be I don't think they're going to be the bottom of the conference. I would be shocked.
As far as, recruiting goes, they did pretty well on the recruiting front. But, these are, 12 four-star true freshman players coming in now. I think that if Colorado is able to have a bounce back, it's going to be a little bit down the road.
Right. It's going to take a couple years to build this thing up.
Right. It's going to take a little bit to develop these guys if they stick around. Who sticks around, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a minute. I don't fully trust a bunch of four-star true freshmen running basically
you
an
think
entire
they're going to be
team.
starting a lot of true freshmen? That's the thing. We don't even know who's going to be playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's so many questions around Colorado, because I think obviously Deion has that pull to bring in high-level recruits, but who's who's to say, right? These guys are going to come in and make immediate impacts right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for me why I have Colorado so low.
I'm trying to find their attendees for media days because sometimes that will kind of tip things off a little bit. Real quick. Bear with me.
As far as so that's why I got Arizona 10. I got Colorado 11, and to kind of round up my rankings, I'm going Cincinnati 12, Oklahoma State 13, West Virginia 15, and then UCF 16. UCF
Houston at 14?
And then Houston at 14. Yes,
Okay.
There you go. That's the team I was missing.
Looking at the Big 12, I think that's a fine list, by the way. I don't think there's much argument there. I think, again, it's very clearly a tiered conference right now.
Yeah.
Like you have the teams at the bottom that have a lot of question marks.
Right.
Looking at the attendees, by the way, for Colorado, interesting. They are bringing 2 quarterbacks. They're bringing Julian Lewis and Caden Salter. They're also bringing offensive lineman Jordan Seaton, defensive back DJ McKinney, and kicker Alejandro Mata. Bringing a kicker with the squad. Somebody brought a punter last year, I think.
Is it Mata the guy that's Mata? Is that the guy that's been with Dion his entire coaching career? Basically?
Oh, it might be like Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But Julian Lewis being there is interesting because he is one of the 4-stars that I'm talking about when we have these conversations, right? He is a 4-star. He's an incredibly talented quarterback, but
he was their big get.
And he's a huge get. He's a huge recruiting get for Colorado. But again, how is that going to translate now in this
in
college,
the year 2025?
In the year 2025 at the college football level.
That's a fair question. Yeah, I get that. Just while we're here, Utah is bringing Devin Dampier, Spencer Fano, Smith Snowden, and Lander Barton. Solid group there. I mean, when you think of this Utah team, that's who you're thinking of, right?
Yes.
Ton of leadership there. Spencer Fano, one of the best offensive linemen in the country. Lander Barton, I want to see a big year out of him this year. I think that we can expect that. Last year, obviously, there were injuries everywhere, so that kind of hurts.
He kind of needs it.
He needs it. He does.
Kind of needs it.
We know the talent is there, but he's got to put up the numbers. And then BYU's bringing L.J. Martin, Chase Roberts, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, and Keanu Tanavasa. Interesting.
Keanu Tanavasa will be fun.
Yeah, that's that's gonna be really fun.
That one will be fun. But again, like you mentioned with Utah, those are your leaders. Those are kind of the guys that put themselves out there as far as the faces of BYU goes, and so especially now without necessarily having a QB1 at the moment. Yeah, those are good guys to represent the BYU brand.
Well, and I love they're bringing 2 linebackers. You know, that's what their identity was last year.
Yes.
Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker.
Still underrated, by the way, in the eyes of the national media.
1,000%. Yeah.
But here locally, we know how great they are.
Yeah, and that linebacking core at BYU last year was so instrumental for Jay Hill and that defense to be one of the top units in the Big 12. Yeah. I had a lot of fun watching them. I think they did great things, and again, coming back, having those 2 studs, and then representing your team at media days.
Massive.
Again, that shows that's your defensive identity right there.
Yes, 100%. Those are 2 guys that I think everybody's excited to watch this season.
Again, that is coming up this Tuesday and Wednesday. You can listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day for wall-to-wall coverage. That's all we're going to be focusing on, so tune in there. We got to take a break. Coming up next, we'll get 5 minutes of. We'll talk a little bit of Utah Mammoth and their free agency pickups. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. As you hear right there, it's time for 5 minutes of. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me. We got Sean behind the glass producing. Very cold here in the studio, Alex. I should have wore a hoodie. I forgot how cold it gets.
You guys are a bunch of babies. I feel good.
You were whining in the break, too.
I feel good. That's a lie.
Speaking of cold, Alex, how do you like this? Speaking of cold, let's talk hockey.
Oh, what a transition.
I had to do it.
I love
it. Oh, man, Utah Hockey Club. Oh, sorry. Utah Mammoth.
Dump it. Sean, dump it.
Got busy. Again, similar to the NBA, free agency opened earlier in the week, and then the Mammoth, of course, had their development camp the latter part of the week. So a lot of news coming out from the Mammoth. I want to talk about, should we do development camp first?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Our guy Cole Bagley, of course, up there with some great in-depth coverage. They do a couple days of camp, and then they finish things off with a scrimmage. Team MVP, or game MVP from the scrimmage, I guess, would be Dmitry Simashev, one of their young prospects, a forward that the team just gave a deal a couple weeks ago. So it looks like Simashev is going to be joining the main roster, and sounds like they have very high expectations for this kid coming in. He was a 2023 draft pick. They're very excited to see him.
Yeah.
And sounds like he dominated the scrimmage.
Yes, and him getting the MVP of the development camp, I think that's a really good sign, right? Because like we mentioned, he's supposed to make the jump this year. We're supposed to see him more now with the first team, with the NHL team, and so him getting the MVP and kind of allowing himself to dominate in the development camp, I think that's a really good sign for Simashev, and his potential to come up and contribute with the Mammoth.
Top two lines are basically ironed out, especially after the addition of J.J. Peterka. But after you lose Josh Doan, there's going to be a lot of playing time up for grabs on that third or fourth line. So I'm assuming we're going to see Simashev on one of those two lines. I'd be surprised if they sent him to the Roadrunners. I'd like to see him. But, obviously that's a good thing. I mean, if he is sent to the Roadrunners, that means that your main roster is full of vets and you're really trying to push for a spot. But who knows? Maybe Simashev is good enough to contribute to a playoff team right now. I know, again, they are very high on him. Big body, bully. We'll see what he can come in and do. It also sounds like, speaking of bully, Cole Baudouin coming in his second year with the program. Still not sure what the future holds for him. I know he wants to fight for a roster spot this year, and that would be great. But again, when they drafted him last year at the back end of the first round, the expectations were that it was going to be a couple years before we saw him anyway. But he's a center, and I know that they need Utah needs some center depth. So we'll see what Baudouin can do. But I know that he's got kind of that bully style, and our guy Cole had some tweets all week about Cole just being scrappy, and he forgot how scrappy he was. And to me, that's a good thing, because as we talked about with Cole last year, that's kind of what this team was lacking during the season, was just some scrappiness.
Some physicality, man.
Yeah.
And if Cole's bringing that at the development camp, then I think that, again, that points for good signs and good things as far as his development goes. And maybe potentially we can see him hopefully soon in a Mammoth sweater.
Quote from the man himself, Cole Baudouin: "I'm going to keep working hard this summer so I can make the team. Going into camp believing in myself, and I think they believe in me, so I want to be a big part of this team. I want to show why I'm worthy to be on that team." So he really, it sounds like that's one of his goals, is to make the main roster coming out of summer. So we'll see there, but there is some competition because, again, free agency open, and Utah made some really nice moves. I liked what they did. I want to start off talking about Nate Schmidt. I think that's the signing I'm most excited for. They also brought in Brandon Tanev and Scott Perunovich. But Nate Schmidt coming in on the defensive side, he comes over from Florida, of course, winning the Stanley Cup over there. If you remember, when they won the Cup, they let all the players who had never won a Cup before carry the Cup around the ice first. And I believe Nate Schmidt was one of the first players to do it. But Schmidt, a solid defenseman. After losing Michael Kesselring, there were definitely some questions about the depth on the defensive side behind, Dursey and Sergachev. So I like Schmidt. I think that's a huge signing.
And ultimately for me, I feel like this is I know Michael Kesselring was a huge fan favorite and the people loved him here. But I think ultimately it is an upgrade over Kesselring. This is a guy he seems like he has a really great personality. Seems like he'll fit right in. He's a good locker room guy, quick defenseman. And so ultimately I think Schmidt is an upgrade over Kesselring. And of course he brings in championship experience. He brings in Stanley Cup experience. And I think that's something that Bill Armstrong and the company have harped on. Wanting to bring in guys who've been in those situations and have had experience playing at that level. Yeah. And I think obviously you get that with Schmidt.
3-year, $10.5 million deal for Nate Schmidt. Again, coming over from Florida. In his career, 52 goals, 187 assists, and he's 33 years old. So Solid player. And we saw them make a nice addition with Ian Cole last year. That was a little bit after the season had started, but he turned out to be a very, very good player for the team. And Nate Schmidt coming in, you can expect something similar. Brandon Tanev, another big addition. He's kind of a lot of people know him because of his, what do they call that? Like the team pictures.
His headshots?
Yeah, his headshots before the season. He just gives like the blank look. And then people were saying he kind of looks like a caveman, which is kind of mean. But I guess it fits the Mammoth theme. And anyway, what I've gathered from Tanev is he's kind of what local fans thought Spicy Tuna was going to be. No disrespect to Tuna because he definitely got the crowd going, the Delta Center going at times. But this dude is going to come in and he's going to be a thorn in the other team's side, and he's going to fight and he's going to scrap and he's going to bug. And again, going back to the Florida Panthers, that was a huge part of them winning the Stanley Cup is because their roster is just full of that guys. Full of guys that are going to get under the team's skin and really throw them off their game. And I think that sort of, mentality, again, that's what Utah was missing last year. So they're bringing in a guy who's going to scrap. He's not going to score a ton of points. He's not going to be probably on your top two lines, but he's definitely going to bring a sort of edge that Utah really needs.
Seems like he's just a guy that has a lot of energy, has a high motor, and isn't afraid to get scrappy with it, man. He isn't afraid to drag people in, to drag you into fights every single night. And so Tanev, I think, is, again, an improvement as far as depth goes, and I'm excited to see what he's able to bring onto the ice for the Mammoth.
Yeah. And then Scott Perunovich, another depth defenseman. Admittedly, this is the guy that I know the least about, but just bringing in depth on the defensive side. Again, after losing Kesselring, and last year, of course, Marino and Dursey also dealt with injuries, and that the group of defensemen got really, really thin. So I think it's good to just build up that defensive depth so that if and when injuries do happen this year, you've just got proven veterans that you can count on. So, Sean, you got anything on Perunovich? If not, that's okay.
I also
he's on a 2-year deal, so he's a young guy.
Plays for the Islanders.
Okay,
I don't pay attention. Or played for them, but I do not pay attention to them.
I get that. Well, yeah, mid-season trade sent him to the Islanders in January. He was previously in St. Louis. So, but again, he's on a 2-year two-way contract, a 1-year two-way contract, excuse me. So he might spend some time in Tucson. Last year we saw, guys like Maverick Lamoureux bounce back and forth. Even Josh Doan did a little bit. So again, a depth piece that you can call upon when needed.
Right.
And I think that's good.
Right. And then obviously I think the big one is Vanacek. Bringing in a backup goaltender who can rotate with Vejmelka.
Yeah.
Because there was still unclarity about Connor Ingram and his future, and exactly where Connor Ingram stands. And so you go back to the Florida Panthers, and you bring in...
the Utah Mammoth Panthers.
Yeah, there you go. And you bring in Vanacek as kind of your backup goaltender to help Veggie. So now you got two Czech goaltenders.
Well, and the thing that I like about this move is it's a 1-year deal at $1.5 million. I know it was funny. I was producing the NHL draft show, and there was, the people on the show, on the station. There was some back and forth about whether Utah needed to bring in a goaltender, and it's like, well, yeah, don't you remember all the hubbub about Veggie playing? I don't remember the streak of like 17 games in a row or whatever to close the year out, and yeah, it's because with Connor Ingram, in the program and not being with the team and trying to get all the help he needs, you're left with Veggie and Stauber. And Stauber was very inexperienced, and it's hard to ask an inexperienced guy to be in that position for a team that, remember, they were fighting for a playoff spot towards the end of the year.
Especially because of that.
You need a depth goaltender, and you know that Veggie's going to come in and be the guy, and this does not affect Veggie at all. But you need somebody who can come in and play on back-to-backs and give your starter some much-needed rest. But it's also a 1-year deal because you don't know what's going to happen with Connor Ingram. Maybe he is back. Who knows with that? But then down the line, you've also got Hrubel in the system who, according to our guy Cole at the development camp, is a monster and is going to come in and has a very high ceiling as an NHL goaltender. So, yeah, you don't want to sign these backup guys to long-term deals that are going to potentially affect that. So I like it. Vanacek at 1 year, $1.5 million. It's a depth piece, a very much needed depth piece. And I think Utah, with Bill Armstrong and Chris Armstrong, did a very great job at plugging all of their holes in free agency.
They cooked, man.
They did.
Bill Armstrong is cooking, and he's getting this team into what they believe and what they think will be a playoff contender team. And I do think that with the additions made, I do think that they upgraded a little bit as far as their depth goes. And so, plus you bring in Peterka, who I think will end up being a phenomenal addition for this Utah Mammoth side. And so I think the Utah Mammoth will continue to make those improvements that we've seen year to year, and hopefully that improvement this season will ultimately lead to a playoff hockey spot, because I think the Mammoth are ready to make that jump.
Peterka raises your ceiling.
I think so, yeah.
The other additions that they made in free agency raise your floor, and I think that's the best way.
Oh, that's a phenomenal way to put it.
Yeah,
that's a phenomenal way to put it.
I cooked with that one. All right, let's take a break. Coming up next, we'll wrap the show up. Preview again tonight's Jazz Summer League game. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza. Alex Napoles with me, here to wrap up another edition. Hope you're having a good weekend out there. You have some good food yesterday?
No. So my parents are out of town, and usually my dad's the chef.
Yeah.
And so we settled for pizza.
That's always fun.
We just got a couple boxes of pizza. Maybe had a little too much pizza.
Well, that's what the holidays are for.
Yeah, man. Calories don't count during the holidays, right?
No.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, I hope everybody listening has all their fingers still. I didn't hear of any accidents, but that doesn't mean they didn't happen. So I don't know.
Yes. We hope everybody had a good, safe holiday.
Want to remind you, got a busy night here on the station. Of course, as always, we're going to have RSL playing tonight and the Salt Lake Bees, as we do basically every Saturday throughout the summer. RSL, it's St. Louis. There it is. I was going to say, I thought it was St. Louis. But yeah, they're pre-match show is 6:30, and then first kick at 7:30. And then the Bees are at home versus Tacoma at 6:50. The Bees game, by the way, is going to be streaming because we have Salt Lake Summer League, the big event tonight here on the station. Again, Jazz taking on the 76ers tonight. Ace Bailey versus VJ Edgecombe. Very excited, and I know that Salt Lake City fans, Utah Jazz fans, are very excited to see Ace Bailey out on the floor in a Jazz uniform. Can't wait to see what he looks like. But not to mention Walt Clayton Jr., and I forgot, he prefers Walt, right? Mm-hmm. I think I saw that earlier in the week. So Walt Clayton Jr. and Ace Bailey tonight.
Again, super excited for this Summer League matchup. Again, you get to see guys who were projected to be the third and fourth best talents. Sometimes even, debated to see who was third and who was fourth. But that is Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe. And so it's exciting to see them get to get to see their NBA start, whether, albeit Summer League.
Yeah.
But here in Salt Lake at the Hudson Center. And so, I mean, if you're not doing anything tonight, Jazz fans, go out, go support, and show Ace Bailey what the Salt Lake fan base and what the Utah Jazz fan base is all about.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the biggest thing that Jazz fans can do is show Ace Bailey what it looks like when there is like a mainstay on this team, when there is a franchise player, when there is a star, right? Because that's when Jazz fans are at their best, is when there is a face of the team to really rally behind. And Ace Bailey can be that. And he's not that right away, but he can be that. He has the potential because he is the best prospect they've had in a very long time. So I'm excited to see what he looks like tonight. Again, you can hear it here on the KSL Sports Zone, or it's also going to be on KJazz.
Tune in. I think you're producing that one, right?
I am producing.
You'll be here tonight doing that one, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You get to watch and hear Ace Bailey.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
David Locke and Ron Boone on the call as well, so tune in. Again, that is at 7. All right, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We will talk to you next week. Again, Big 12 Media Days, Tuesday and Wednesday here on The Zone, so tune in for that. A lot of exciting news coming down the pipeline. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.